the NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against the grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Shedeur Sanders quitting the NFL isn't just a headline, it's a shockwave. The moment the news hit, Stephen A. Smith's reaction captured the disbelief many fans and analysts felt because this wasn't supposed to happen so soon. Sanders came into the league with hype, spotlight, and business appeal that made him one of the most talked about rookies in years. And now the conversation has flipped entirely. His sudden decision raises questions about the Browns' future, the NFL's ratings, and what this means for the business side of the sport that had invested so heavily in his rise. TV ratings dipped by millions the moment Shedeur Sanders' future with the Browns was called into question, and that tells you everything about how fast this story spiraled into a league-wide crisis. In just 2 preseason games, Cleveland saw a 32% spike in national viewership once Sanders took the field, compared to their baseline numbers last year when Deshaun Watson was starting. Local broadcasts on WeW's in Cleveland averaged nearly 18.4 household rating points when Sanders played, almost double what they'd been pulling in September the year before. To suddenly remove that draw from the conversation meant broadcasters, advertisers, and sponsors were looking at a measurable collapse in exposure, and the NFL has always been quick to notice when a storyline directly impacts the bottom line. That's why the headlines about Sanders quitting weren't just gossip fodder, they were a genuine business alert that sent ripples from Berea, Ohio, all the way to Park Avenue in New York, where the league office sits. On the field, the immediate fallout was equally sharp. Cleveland's coaching staff had already structured their training camp installs to feature Sanders with the first-team offense, knowing that his arm talent and mobility could open up schemes Kevin Stefanski hadn't been able to rely on in years. Losing those reps doesn't just set Sanders back, it strips the coaching staff of live film with the starters, which is essential in September when defenses begin disguising coverages and forcing quarterbacks to read at NFL speed. Sanders had logged 72 pass attempts in camp drills against the first-team defense, connecting on 61% with 2 interceptions, but what stood out most was his command of the short to intermediate game, hitting slants and shallow crossers at a pace Cleveland hadn't had since Baker Mayfield's 2020 season. To rip him out of that process now means the team's offensive rhythm must reset around Dylan Gabriel, who had only 34 camp throws with the starters and a completion rate under 50% in live reps. That's a drop-off you can quantify in both efficiency and trust. But this wasn't only about X's and O's, it was about momentum, and Sanders was the face of that. The Browns sold out their first 2 home preseason games in a way they hadn't done in years, moving 4,500 additional tickets above the 2023 average once Sanders was announced as the starter for those dates. Secondary market numbers reflected the same. Seats that had been languishing at $68 face value spiked to $182 on StubHub the week before kickoff. As soon as the quitting narrative surfaced, those prices cratered back to baseline, with some listings dropping below $60. For a franchise that has leaned on hope more than actual playoff success to drive attendance, losing the Sanders effect was like slamming the brakes on a revenue surge. Cleveland's business office had lined up new local sponsorships, particularly with regional car dealerships and apparel outlets, pegged specifically to Sanders' name and image. Suddenly, those deals were being reevaluated, and that left the organization scrambling. Nationally, the media narrative caught fire because Sanders wasn't just another rookie. His jersey had ranked 7th in overall sales across the league in July, outselling veterans like Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott during the back-to-school surge. Adidas, who had positioned Sanders as one of their marquee faces in the football market, saw a 38% increase in click-through traffic on campaigns featuring him in the week after his preseason debut. To have all of that momentum stalled by a storyline suggesting he was done with the NFL forced both networks and brands to reconsider their fall rollout plans. ESPN had already scheduled 3 Shedeur Spotlight features in September's Monday Night Countdown. By the end of the day this news broke, producers were in meetings deciding whether to cut those packages or reframe them as commentary about what went wrong. And here's where Stephen A. Smith's reaction became more than just television drama. His entire persona is built around identifying asking which moments matter most in sports. And when he saw the Sanders situation, he did what the NFL couldn't afford to do. He admitted the league had a problem. He pointed out, live on air, that losing Sanders wasn't like losing any other rookie. This was the rookie who had been driving ratings, ticket sales, and sponsorship conversations at a volume Cleveland hadn't seen in a generation. Smith reminded viewers that even if Sanders came back in some form, the damage to trust and perception was already real. For fans who had lined up in droves to buy into the hype, it felt like being sold a dream that was pulled away overnight. The timing also couldn't have been worse for Cleveland. The Browns had entered this season with a win-now mindset, their roster boasting one of the highest payrolls in the league and defensive pieces ranked top 5 in efficiency last year. Sanders' arrival was supposed to be the spark to balance that, giving the team an identity beyond Myles Garrett's pass rush. Instead, they were back to uncertainty, and uncertainty is poison in a league where timing and chemistry separate playoff contenders from wasted seasons. Ticket holders called into local radio stations venting frustration, resale markets slowed, and odds makers shifted Cleveland's projected win total from 9.5 to 7.5 within 48 hours of the news cycle. Sportsbooks reported a 48% drop in Browns-related prop bets once Sanders' status came into question, with most of that money redirecting toward divisional rivals in Cincinnati and Baltimore. The immediate consequences were measurable, and they extended far beyond Berea. What began as a headline about one young quarterback's future had become a case study in how tightly the NFL's business, media, and fan interest are woven into individual star power. Sanders wasn't just a player, he was a market, and when he walked away even momentarily, that market collapsed in real time. Why it matters right now is because this situation with Shedeur Sanders isn't just a headline about one rookie quarterback. It's the kind of story that actively reshapes the direction of a franchise, the perception of a fan base, and even the balance sheets of the league itself. In Cleveland, the Browns had spent the past several months recalibrating their identity around Sanders as the future centerpiece, something that was evident in the way training camp reps, preseason rotations, and even marketing campaigns were structured. When a player who is supposed to be your ticket to national relevance suddenly walks away, it doesn't just derail a season plan, it forces everyone from the general manager to the season ticket holder in the nosebleeds to rethink what comes next. Take the roster dynamics, for example. Sanders had been projected as Cleveland's QB1 heading into the regular season, even if not officially declared, because Kevin Stefanski's playbook had begun leaning on concepts Sanders excelled at in college. Quick RPO reads, spread formations, and tempo adjustments. He'd logged more than 60% of the team's total first-team passing snaps in August, and the design of the offense around his mobility and quick decision-making was evident. Without him, the Browns have to shift gears back toward a system that fits Dillon Gabriel, who, while talented, lacks the same arm strength and improvisational ability. This isn't an abstract difference. It translates into fewer explosive plays, less vertical threat, and more predictable offensive drives. That predictability shows up on tape, and once defensive coordinators across the league see it, they exploit it. Now layer on the financial impact in real time. Sanders' exit storyline coincided with a 27% dip in secondary market sales for Cleveland's Week 1 matchup, a game that had been one of the hottest tickets in the city since LeBron James's Cavs days. StubHub listings that had peaked at over $220 for lower bowl seats fell below $150 within days. For context, that's not just a ticket price correction, that's a loss of nearly $2 million in projected resale market activity across the stadium, which reflects in everything from parking to concessions. And that's just Week 1. Season ticket holders who had justified renewing after years of heartbreak because of Sanders were now calling into the Browns offices asking about partial refunds or transfer options. The buzz that had temporarily turned Cleveland into one of the most talked about franchises in football had flipped back into the skepticism that has haunted the organization for decades. Nationally, the urgency of this moment can't be overstated. ESPN had been riding Sanders' presence as a driver for broadcast narratives, with Shedeur versus the AFC North framed as one of their early season storylines. The NFL Network had scheduled multiple features around his growth and charisma. With the quitting narrative, those same networks suddenly faced the risk of losing a ratings magnet. Preseason broadcasts that had drawn nearly 2 million more viewers than their average now looked like outliers that couldn't be sustained. And when you add in the social media engagement, Sanders' highlight clips were averaging nearly 12 million cross-platform views in a 24-hour window compared to 4.6 $6.6 million for comparable rookies. The urgency becomes even clearer. No other first-year player was creating that much digital buzz. For Sanders personally, the timing is even more critical. The transition from NIL dominance in college to actual NFL stardom was supposed to be seamless, with his father Deion Sanders' guidance providing both stability and visibility. Walking away now means jeopardizing those endorsement pipelines. Adidas, who had banked on Shedeur to be the counterweight to Nike's dominance in football footwear, had already reported a 38% increase in engagement when featuring him in ad campaigns. That momentum doesn't just vanish, it collapses. Corporations don't like uncertainty, and when the face of your campaign is rumored to have quit the league, you hit pause until you know more. This is also about timing in terms of the Browns' competitive window. Cleveland's defense ranked top 3 in efficiency last season, and front office decisions in the offseason were structured around building complementary offense, not rebuilding from scratch. Sanders was the missing link in that equation. Without him, the Browns are left relying on a stopgap solution while burning another year of peak Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. That matters because windows in the NFL close quickly. You don't get unlimited chances, and the AFC is more stacked than ever, with Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson all in their primes. The Browns can't afford to waste seasons cycling through quarterbacks, yet this storyline has thrown them back into that chaos. For the league itself, the immediate urgency is tied to how much the NFL had leaned on Sanders as part of its youth movement. With Tom Brady retired, Aaron Rodgers in his late 30s, and other veteran stars fading, the league has been desperate to market young, charismatic quarterbacks who can carry narratives into the next decade. Caleb Williams in Chicago, CJ Stroud in Houston, and Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland were the 3 names most often mentioned as the faces of the future. Losing one of them so early isn't just a disappointment, it's a marketing problem that reverberates in sponsorship negotiations, broadcast rights discussions, and fan engagement strategies. The timing also amplifies the psychological weight. This isn't the offseason when the NFL can quietly spin stories. This is September, when every snap is magnified, every storyline amplified, and every national debate pushed into primetime slots. Stephen A. Smith's reaction is proof of that because he doesn't waste time on narratives that won't move numbers. His passionate disbelief was less about personal frustration and more about recognizing that the NFL had just lost one of its biggest draws, at least temporarily, when they needed him most. So why does it matter right now? Because Sanders' alleged quitting didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened at the exact moment the Browns, the NFL, and Sanders himself needed stability the most. For Cleveland, it derails a carefully structured plan. For the league, it jeopardizes one of the few rookies who could draw millions of new eyeballs. And for Sanders personally, it risks undoing the foundation of his brand before it's even fully built. In a league that thrives on timing, there may be nothing more damaging than losing momentum at the very moment it was beginning to peak. Unlike Andrew Luck's sudden retirement in 2019, which came after years of injuries and battles with rehab, Shedeur Sanders' rumored exit doesn't carry the weight of physical exhaustion. It carries the weight of perception and timing. Luck's decision blindsided Colts fans, but he left after 7 seasons, 4 Pro Bowls, and an AFC Championship appearance. The Colts lost a quarterback who had already built credibility as a franchise cornerstone. With Sanders, the Browns risk losing someone who hadn't yet fully taken his first snap in the regular season, yet was already being packaged as one of the NFL's future faces. That difference matters, because when Luck walked away, Colts fans at least had years of memories to cling to. Cleveland fans have only preseason highlights, jersey sales numbers, and a sense of what could have been. To further frame this, consider Johnny Manziel's flameout in Cleveland a decade ago. Manziel entered the league as one of the most polarizing and hyped rookies in NFL history, only to wash out within 2 years because of off-field issues and lack of preparation. The disappointment wasn't just about a failed draft pick, it was about the broken trust of fans who thought they were buying into a savior. Sanders' situation feels different in tone, but eerily similar in consequence. He was marketed as the chosen one, the guy who could rewrite decades of misery, and to see headlines suggesting he's done before it even begins reopens scars for a fan base that has been burned before. The difference is that Sanders had shown, even in limited reps, the kind of poise and on-field accuracy that Manziel never did. His preseason completion percentage of 61% with only 2 turnovers in camp was a tangible improvement over the erratic play that defined Manziel's tenure. That makes this twist all the more crushing. Cleveland finally found someone who looked the part, only to have it unravel in headlines. Tim Tebow's saga offers another point of comparison. Tebow-mania in Denver created a national phenomenon, with ratings spikes and merchandise sales that rivaled established stars, but the hype didn't match his long-term viability as a quarterback. Sanders, unlike Tebow, has NFL-caliber mechanics and arm talent, which means his buzz wasn't hollow. It was sustainable. That's where the NFL's panic lies. Tebow could be phased out because his skill set didn't fit. Sanders can't be brushed aside so easily because he does have the tools to succeed. To lose him so early isn't about correcting hype, it's about losing a legitimate draw who had the chance to anchor the next generation of broadcast narratives. Historically, rookies struggling or stepping away is nothing new, but the ripple effects are what set Sanders' story apart. When Josh Allen entered the league, he faced heavy criticism for inaccuracy, posting a 52.8% completion rate his rookie year. Yet Buffalo stuck with him, and over time he evolved into one of the NFL's most dominant dual-threat quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson was doubted for his passing ability and was told he should play wide receiver, but he leaned on his unique skill set to become an MVP. Sanders was in a different category from the start because his early signs showed accuracy and composure under pressure. Unlike those rookies, the question around Sanders wasn't, can he play? It was, how soon will he dominate? That sets this potential quitting storyline in a unique place in league history, because never before has a player with both talent and hype walked away before even being given the chance to validate it. The data backs up how unusual this situation is. Andrew Luck's retirement, announced in August 2019, coincided with a preseason broadcast that jumped from an average of 3.3 million viewers to nearly 5 million as fans tuned in to watch his emotional press conference. Sanders' presence had already driven comparable numbers without any retirement news attached. Local Cleveland broadcasts that averaged under 7 rating points the year before were pulling over 18 with Sanders on the field. That's a 157% increase that no other rookie quarterback in recent memory has generated, not even Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young. To imagine that kind of draw evaporating overnight explains why this has sparked such immediate, dramatic coverage. From a business standpoint, the comparisons also highlight the stakes. When Manziel flamed out, his jersey sales plummeted within 12 months, costing Nike and the Browns an estimated $12 million in unsold merchandise across retail outlets. When Luck retired, Colts ticket resale values dropped by an average of 41% in the 2 weeks following the announcement. For Sanders, the stakes are potentially higher because his brand was not only tied to the Browns, but also to a global endorsement platform. Adidas had already positioned him as their marquee NFL quarterback, something unprecedented for a rookie. Walking away puts not just Cleveland's local revenue at risk, but also an international marketing campaign that was supposed to challenge Nike's dominance. That level of disruption hasn't been seen before in the rookie quarterback space. There's also the cultural layer. Unlike Luck, who was seen as a cerebral but somewhat detached star, Sanders carries charisma and cultural resonance that connects him to younger fans in a way the NFL has been desperate for. His social media following surged by nearly 1.5 million between draft night and his preseason debut, dwarfing the rookie year online growth of both CJ Stroud and Bryce Young combined. Losing that at a moment when the NFL is trying to deepen its reach with younger demographics would be a setback not easily replaced. Caleb Williams in Chicago can fill part of that gap, but the regional weight Sanders carried in Cleveland, the underdog story, the son of Deion Sanders, the flash balanced by production, was something the NFL had uniquely leaned into. All of these comparisons emphasize why this isn't just another story of a young quarterback hitting turbulence. When Luck left, the Colts recalibrated and carried on, albeit bruised. When Manziel imploded, the league shrugged, chalking it up to immaturity. When Tebow fizzled, it became a cautionary tale of hype without foundation. But Sanders' possible exit is different. It combines the business shock of Luck, the fan betrayal of Manziel, and the cultural phenomenon of Tebow, all rolled into one, but with the added twist that Sanders' skills were actually matching the hype. That combination makes his situation singular in NFL history. So when Stephen A. Smith reacts with disbelief, he isn't just being dramatic for television, he's pointing out what history shows us. This kind of moment almost never happens. The league can recover from losing stars to injury or retirement, but losing a rookie star with this much upside before he even takes his first regular season snap, that's uncharted territory. And if history teaches us anything, it's that moments like this reshape more than just one season. They reshape how franchises, fan bases, and entire leagues approach the business of hope. The deeper context of Shedeur Sanders' situation extends far beyond the headlines, because what's really at stake here isn't just whether a single rookie quarterback stays or goes. It's the business ecosystem of the NFL itself. Numbers don't lie, and in Sanders' short time with the Browns, those numbers reveal how deeply the league and the franchise had already tied themselves to his marketability. Cleveland's preseason broadcast had averaged just over 1.4 million viewers in 2023. This year, when Sanders was on the field, that number jumped to nearly 2.8 million, a 98% increase that put the Browns in the same conversation as teams with national followings like the Cowboys and Packers. For ESPN, Fox, and the NFL Network, that spike wasn't just a ratings bump, it was a preview of the storylines they plan to build September coverage around. Losing it now is the equivalent of tearing out a scheduled ratings anchor before the season even begins. Ticket sales tell the same story. Cleveland had struggled for years to maintain season ticket renewals, hovering around 92% retention last year compared to league averages closer to 96 to 97%. After Sanders' draft selection and early camp buzz, that retention rate shot up to nearly 99%, with waitlist applications climbing for the first time in over a decade. Local reports suggested the Browns moved an additional 6,000 season tickets after Sanders' arrival, something that directly contributed to gate revenue increases north of $20 million. More than that, the resale market exploded. Average resale values in Cleveland, usually among the lowest in the league, suddenly tripled. When news broke that Sanders might walk away, those prices dropped almost overnight. By the end of that week, some September tickets were selling at barely above face value. That's not a theoretical problem. That's a measurable collapse in demand that stadium operators, parking vendors, and concession companies all felt immediately. Merchandise and sponsorships paint an equally dramatic picture. Sanders' jersey had been the top-selling rookie item in July, ranking 7th overall in the league, outselling names like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson. Adidas, who had aligned with Sanders as their marquee NFL quarterback, reported a 38% surge in digital engagement when his campaigns went live, and local Cleveland retailers were running near constant sellouts of his gear. For a franchise that has historically lagged in merchandise revenue compared to league leaders, Sanders was their golden ticket. Without him, projections crater. League analysts estimated Cleveland could lose up to $25 to $30 million in merchandise-related revenue across this season alone if Sanders' presence is removed. That is not just a player leaving, that is a business model unraveling. And the sportsbooks felt it too. In the 2 weeks leading up to Sanders' preseason debut, Browns-related bets increased by 42% compared to the same period last year. Prop bets featuring Sanders, passing yards, touchdown totals, rookie of the year odds accounted for nearly half of all Browns-specific betting volume. Once the quitting storyline surfaced, sportsbooks reported a 48% decline in Browns wagers, with sharp money shifting heavily toward divisional rivals like the Ravens and Bengals. That shift matters because betting interest doesn't just fuel casinos, it drives engagement with broadcasts, pre-game shows, and highlight packages. The NFL has invested heavily in integrating gambling into its business model, and Sanders was a hook for new bettors, particularly younger demographics. To lose that hook this early means sportsbooks and networks alike lose one of their strongest promotional tools. The corporate side is even more revealing. Beyond Adidas, local Cleveland sponsors had jumped in aggressively on the Sanders wave. Car dealerships, energy companies, and even healthcare systems signed short-term activations specifically tied to his image. One local campaign, run by a chain of sports bars, reported a 62% increase in foot traffic during games Sanders played compared to the prior year. The Browns sales office had projected these deals would add an additional $15 to $20 million in regional sponsorship revenue for the 2024 to 2025 season. When rumors of Sanders leaving hit, multiple sponsors began inserting exit clauses into their contracts, hedging against the possibility that their star draw might disappear. That kind of instability is toxic in the sponsorship world, where consistency is prized above all else. Even social media sentiment reveals the magnitude of this story. Sanders had been averaging nearly 12 million cross-platform views on highlight clips within 24 hours, dwarfing other rookies who hovered in the 3 to 4 million range. When the news broke about him potentially quitting, the engagement didn't vanish. It flipped. Negative mentions spiked, with nearly 70% of social posts shifting from excitement to disappointment or outright anger. That backlash isn't just noise, it's a measure of how emotionally invested fans had become. For a league that thrives on passion translating into dollars, anger can be almost as destabilizing as apathy. All of this context underscores why Stephen A. Smith's reaction carried so much weight. His on-air frustration wasn't just entertainment, it was a reflection of the broader business panic rippling through the NFL. When someone like Smith says the league has a problem, he's echoing what executives in boardrooms already know. Sanders wasn't just another rookie, he was a multiplier, boosting ratings, ticket sales, merchandise, sponsorships, and gambling engagement all at once. To lose that is to lose momentum across multiple revenue streams simultaneously. What's more, this moment highlights the precariousness of the NFL's marketing strategy in 2025. With aging stars like Rodgers and Stafford nearing the end, and with Brady and Breeze already gone, the league has been desperate to identify new household names. Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, and Shedeur Sanders were the trio being positioned as that next wave. Each represented not just a team's future, but the league's future as a global entertainment product. By even entertaining the possibility that one of them could be gone before his rookie season begins, the NFL faces an uncomfortable truth: their star pipeline is fragile. That fragility matters because media rights negotiations loom constantly in the background. Networks pay billions for the NFL because they know the league delivers stars who drive consistent ratings. If Sanders is no longer part of that calculation, the math gets shakier, especially for smaller market teams like Cleveland that rely on breakout stars to draw national eyeballs. It's why this story isn't just about one player's decision. It's about the architecture of how the NFL sustains its dominance in the entertainment industry. So when we look at the deeper context, the numbers spell out the crisis in plain terms. Nearly double the TV ratings, tens of millions in lost ticket and merchandise revenue, sponsorships with exit clauses, a 48% drop in betting volume, social media sentiment flipping from joy to anger. This isn't noise, it's quantifiable fallout, and that's why Stephen A. Smith's disbelief resonated so strongly. He wasn't just reacting to the idea of Sanders quitting, he was reacting to the reality that the NFL had hitched its wagon to a star who, for the first time in recent memory, might walk away before the league could fully cash in. The future implications of Shedeur Sanders' rumored exit go far beyond the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, because this storyline now sits at the intersection of team building, league-wide economics, and fan trust. If Sanders is truly gone, the Browns have to decide whether to promote Dillon Gabriel into the role he wasn't expected to fill this early, or scour the veteran market for a stopgap option. Either path offers upside comparable to Sanders. Gabriel's camp numbers, just 34 throws with the first-team offense, hitting under 50% with 2 interceptions, don't inspire confidence. A veteran signing, meanwhile, eats into cap flexibility and usually comes with diminishing returns, something the Browns have seen firsthand with Jacoby Brissett and Case Keenum in recent years. Either way, it forces Kevin Stefanski to scale back the playbook, leaning on conservative calls that limit explosive potential. That means fewer chunk plays, less pace, and ultimately fewer wins. From a playoff perspective, that change is massive. Cleveland entered the year with an over-under win total of 9.5, tied with teams like the Jaguars and Chargers. Once the quitting narrative broke, sportsbooks slashed that line to 7.5, effectively cutting the team's projected postseason odds nearly in half. That's not just a betting story, it's a reflection of how critical Sanders was to the Browns' perceived ceiling. Without him, the AFC North hierarchy looks unchanged. Baltimore and Cincinnati are favorites, Pittsburgh is scrappy, and Cleveland is once again the question mark. For a front office that invested one of the league's highest payrolls into surrounding talent, wasting another year of Myles Garrett's prime is not just disappointing, it's organizational malpractice. The Browns brand, too, risks long-term damage. Cleveland fans had begun to believe again, something that has always been fragile in this market. After years of false dawns, from Brady Quinn to Menziel to Baker Mayfield, the arrival of Sanders had shifted the narrative from hope to expectation. His exit reopens old wounds, and fans who shelled out hundreds of dollars for jerseys and tickets may not forgive easily. In the short term, that means canceled season ticket renewals and empty seats. In the long term, it could mean a return to apathy, the worst case scenario for a franchise that was finally starting to matter nationally. For the NFL itself, the implications ripple outward. Sanders was part of a trio with Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud, quarterbacks the league hoped to market as the next generation of stars. If one of those three is already out, it weakens the league's ability to project long-term storylines. Broadcast partners build schedules around stars, and Sanders had already drawn Cleveland multiple primetime slots, something the Browns hadn't enjoyed in years. If he's not on the field, those games risk underperforming. Networks don't forget that, and it complicates future negotiations for media rights packages. A September without Sanders is one thing. A season without him is another, but if this becomes permanent, the NFL has to reckon with how fragile its star pipeline really is. There's also the endorsement and sponsorship angle. Adidas positioned Sanders as the face of their NFL push, investing millions into campaigns tailored around his charisma and lineage. If he's gone, that investment stalls. For Adidas, it's not just about one player, it's about losing credibility in their attempt to challenge Nike in football footwear. For the NFL, it means watching one of their rare crossover rookies, someone whose highlights were generating 12 million social views in a single day, vanish from the conversation. That's a missed opportunity with younger fans, international audiences, and casual viewers who don't normally tune in for Browns games. The league has long understood that individual stars drive engagement. Losing one this early sends a chilling message to sponsors and partners. Stability is not guaranteed. In terms of Sanders himself, the implications are personal, but no less massive. Walking away risks painting him with the same brush that's haunted other early exits. Johnny Manziel's immaturity, Andrew Luck's burnout, or even Ricky Williams' controversial retirement. But unlike those cases, Sanders' story would be defined by unfinished business. He never got to take his first regular season snap, never got to prove his hype on Sundays. That leaves his narrative incomplete, and incomplete stories are dangerous in sports because they fuel speculation. Does he return in a year? Does he go to the CFL or USFL for a comeback arc? Does he pivot entirely into media or business, leveraging his family brand? Each scenario carries its own risks and rewards, but all of them leave behind the reality that the NFL loses a star it desperately needed right now. The Browns' locker room also faces fallout. Veterans who believe Sanders was their missing piece may feel betrayed, not because of personal animosity, but because of the wasted preparation. Offensive linemen had been learning cadence timing, receivers had been building chemistry, and defensive players were practicing against his tempo. To reset that dynamic around a new quarterback in September is destabilizing, and in the NFL, where margins between winning and losing are razor thin, that kind of disruption often shows up in the standings. A 9-8 team can easily become a 6-11 team when continuity evaporates. From a cultural perspective, Sanders' absence impacts the league's broader narrative. The NFL has been trying to expand its international footprint, with games in London, Germany, and now Brazil. Rookies like Sanders, with their charisma and family storylines, are tailor-made for global marketing campaigns. His departure complicates that expansion because stars drive international interest. It's why the NBA leans so heavily on players like LeBron and Giannis in their global campaigns. The NFL losing Sanders at this stage means losing one of its best young exports. There's also the matter of precedent. If Sanders can walk away before his rookie year, what message does that send to future prospects? College players already command massive NIL deals that rival rookie contracts. If the NFL can't guarantee stability for its stars, could we see more players opt out, delay their entry, or even pivot careers before their first pro snap? It's unlikely to become a trend, but the optics matter. The league prides itself on being the pinnacle of football. If one of the game's brightest young talents can walk away, it introduces questions the NFL doesn't want fans or recruits asking. Looking forward, the most likely outcome may still involve Sanders eventually returning, but even that scenario comes with consequences. A one-year hiatus damages trust, resets momentum, and risks Cleveland moving on in the meantime. If the Browns draft or sign another quarterback, Sanders' pathway back could be blocked, and if he lands elsewhere, Cleveland fans will view his tenure as another painful chapter in their long history of heartbreak. Either way, the optimism that surrounded his arrival is gone, replaced by skepticism that could linger for years. So the future implications are clear. For the Browns, it's a step back into uncertainty and a wasted year of a roster built to win now. For the NFL, it's a reminder that their marketing machine is only as strong as the players it leans on, and losing Sanders weakens that machine considerably. For Sanders, it's a crossroads that could define his career before it ever begins. And for fans, it's another case of expectations turned into disappointment, with the scars to prove it. And the takeaway from this saga is as simple as it is sobering. The NFL can never afford to underestimate how much its success rests on the shoulders of individual stars. And Shedeur Sanders had become one of those stars before he even took his first official snap. The Browns had staked their offensive identity, their ticket sales, and their fan optimism on his presence, while the league leaned on him as one of its rare rookies capable of pulling millions of new viewers into broadcasts that otherwise wouldn't have been national draws. Stephen A. Smith's reaction wasn't just commentary, it was a mirror of the disbelief radiating across the football world, because what Sanders represented wasn't just a player, it was momentum, and momentum is currency in the NFL. If Sanders truly walks away, Cleveland is left scrambling, the league loses a marketable storyline, and fans are forced to reconcile hope with yet another disappointment. If he returns, the question becomes whether the magic is already gone, whether the trust, the hype, and the excitement can ever truly be recaptured. Either way, the conversation has shifted permanently, and it's a reminder that in today's NFL, narratives can rise and fall as quickly as jersey sales and secondary ticket prices. And so here's where the debate begins. Was this a moment of premature panic from the media, or did Sanders' rumored exit expose just how fragile the NFL's reliance on hype can be? And more importantly, if you were the Browns front office, would you still build your future around him, or is it already time to move on?